To make this two-piece Valentine's romper, you're going to first need some Valentine's fabric, and then you're going to need some lining, some thread, and some buttons for your closure, unless you're like me and ended up opting for Velcro in the end. First thing I did is I cut out my lining and my Valentine's fabric into my bodice, and I just sewed both of those up like you would with a basic bodice. Second, I went ahead and I made straps. I made these 2 inches wide, and then I went ahead and I attached them to my Valentine's fabric on my bodice. I just attached them like so, very simple. I just followed the seams of the bodice, but you could put these wherever you would like. You could crisscross them, whatever suits you. And then I just went ahead and I put the lining right sides together, and I went ahead and I sewed right along the top. This is what the bodice looks like when it's laid out flat, and then this is what the bodice would look like if it was closed and had a closure in the back already. This is the front view. When I was done with that, I went ahead and I took my bodice, which was sewed to my lining, and I put in some boning channels. I didn't bother making actual channels or casing, so to say, and I didn't even use any ribbons. I just sewed 2 lines right down the fabric, and then I just slid my boning, or my cable ties in this case, right into those channels. I didn't really care if the threads showed. I thought it gave it a little character. Here you can see it from the front. You can't really tell because this fabric is very eye-popping. And then here you can tell from the lining, it's a bit easier to see with that red thread. Then it was on to that circle skirt ruffle on the bottom of my bodice. I went ahead and I made a basic circle skirt pattern, and then I cut it into 4ths. I wanted to make sure that all my birds were right side up, and I didn't want any of them to be upside down around the skirt, so this is why I opted for this. One thing I do suggest though is if you're going to cut your pattern into 4ths, is just making sure that you add in a seam allowance. This is something that I did not do, and although it didn't make or break the bodice, I would suggest it. It would make it look a lot nicer. Here you can see I went ahead and I sewed up 3 of the sides, and I left the back side open because I was going to use that for my closure. And then I just went ahead and I serged that inner circle and the outer circle, and then I just folded over that outer circle, just a basic hem. It's not even a rolled hem, very simple. Here you can see what the ruffle will look like when it's all laid out flat. And then you're just going to go ahead and do a rolled hem on the edge of your bodice. Very, very simple. Here you can see the bodice and the ruffle are nicely lined up. The next part is going to be pinning these together like so. Then you're just going to sew that up, and here's a little sneak peek of what that's going to look like. It looks very, very cute to me. Here you can see on the left that the ruffle is not quite long enough for the bodice, but it ends up being alright in the end. When I overlapped the left onto the right for my closure, everything lined up fine, but this is why I suggest adding a seam allowance to your 4/4 of your circle skirt. If you're using, or you're not using a one-way fabric, then this really isn't going to be a problem. You can just use a regular circle skirt. Here you can see I was trying to figure out how I wanted to put my buttons. I thought it was going to look really cute, but I had never actually used the button setting on my sewing machine, and I say my new sewing machine, but I've actually had it for 2 years, and I just never have experimented with that, so I decided to opt for Velcro. You'll kind of see me showing you how to do that again, and just how the left side folds over onto the right. I really wanted to make sure that you could see this. I know that this fabric is very, very busy, and it's kind of hard to tell everything I'm doing, especially with all the white and red. So the left just goes right over the right. Really easy. And that's it. I just sewed that in, and there's the top, or there's the bodice. That is the top part of my 2-piece romper. In my second video, I'll show you how I made the shorts. I like the fact that it's a 2-piece because it makes it a lot easier to take it on and off. And in my state, it's really, really cold during Valentine's, at least where I currently live. So I decided to layer this with a long sleeve shirt, although it does look very cute as a summer blouse.